That's right. We're right back here, Sharp Facets Gallery this morning. I tell you what, this morning we have former Senator Jim DeMint on the air with us, falling in love with America this afternoon. Oops, again. Falling in love with America again. And this afternoon we have retired Colonel James M. Wheeler. Jim Wheeler, how are you doing today?
Very good. And thank you very much for the opportunity to come join you.
Well, we are looking forward to hearing about what you did in the military and what you're doing now. I mean, you graduated from Greenwood High when?
In 1966, I graduated from Greenwood High right in the height of the Vietnam War. And shortly thereafter, I joined the South Carolina National Guard. Went to Fort Gordon, Georgia, locally, I think, to take my initial training, and after that came back to the Guard and was in several units here in the upstate, Abbeville, Ware Shoals, Newberry, and Spartanburg. And basically my training was in the Signal Corps, so we kind of did the Ma Bell type communications that was known in the civilian market at the time. We would take the equipment to the field and set it up. Normally the first type unit into the zone and the last to leave, because we provided the communications for the units that were on the ground, mostly in a support role, not on the ground in the war zone itself.
Well, that was pretty important stuff.
It was. It's interesting to note today that it's still very important. However, all the equipment's changed. All the technology that we see in the civilian market is right there in the military services now, on the battlefield. Everything that you're using right here on the radio can be found on the battlefield today.
Sure. But they used to use Martys, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the
Absolutely.
Martys, yeah.
Absolutely. And our handheld ring telephones, and of course you had to have a direct line that connected the telephones. So it was totally different back then, and as I went up in rank and made moves to different staff positions and started trying to tackle the idea of new equipment, boy, it was amazing. It was overwhelming unless you were one of the young guys, just like the kids in school today. Oh, they all have a computer or a cell phone or whatever, and they're so far more advanced than individuals at my age, even today. And they certainly were back 25 years ago when those technologies changed and we brought them into the military, and the young soldiers, men and women, were really adamant about learning the new technologies, and most of them had pretty good careers when they left the military in the technology field.
Sure. Well, you know, the movie Lone Wolf, did you happen to see that one?
I did not see that, I'm sorry.
Not see
no,
that?
I did not.
Okay, because they were communicating with not a cell phone, but a cell type phone, and they were only supposed to communicate at certain times.
Right.
And, yeah. It was pretty interesting, and how after they missed a couple of times, in this case, nobody was getting that excited about it. It was just they had missed a couple of times.
Yeah, exactly.
And yet if they had, things might have turned out different for them.
Yeah.
But communication is such an important issue. And, of course, today they Skype from Afghanistan,
Absolutely.
Iraq, back home.
They absolutely do. And, of course, that's a part of another part of the military that didn't exist many years ago, and that is the families. The families are so important now for our military members that we finally found a way in the Department of Defense to really take a look at families, both active duty, Guard and Reserve, throughout the military family. So taking care of families and having that direct contact with them through technologies from Afghanistan back to the States is really amazing.
It is amazing. And what do you think brought about, since we're on this subject here, what do you think it brought about the change in the military to include families? You know, I always think of military that live on base have a lot more connection with what's going on. But our reserve families, they don't have that. They could be living right next door to me. And, you know, they don't have that connubial relationship that those that live on base do.
That's true to an extent. You know, I can go back and tell you as a civilian, and then being a part-time soldier, as we used to call it way back when, not that anymore. it was always interesting to get to drill on the weekend or go to the camp in the summer and soldier with the people that you weren't frequently seeing or
Sure.
working with. So that part was there. However, there was no maybe once a year that we would bring the families in and have Christmas lunch. And of course, one time a year is not very much. Try to bring them up to date what we were doing in the garden, what was happening in our unit, and where we were going, and what we were looking to do, and so forth. That all changed, and I think it changed as a result of what has happened over time. And that is, I remember many years back when the Gulf War started, a number of our reserve components were never deployed, never called up even. Because they were not a part, if you will, of the active component. That has all changed today, and
today I think they're out there first, aren't they?
they're almost out there first. And
Yeah.
we had an experience after the Gulf War where our end strength in the military came down. We did it to save money. We then, while the Guard and Reserves also came down in numbers, we still continued to train them. They were getting more of the modern equipment the active components had. And then when the buildup came in Southeast Asia, the active component didn't have the wherewith to actually do what needed to be done. So a lot of the reserve units were called to active duty. And I think at that point, there was a real push to train family members and wives and spouses what to do, what their benefits were, and so forth when we started actively deploying the Guard and Reserve. And that's been very recent in relationship to what all's happened over time and as far as skirmishes and wars are concerned in the United States.
Now, you brought up a very interesting point that after a cool down, shall we say, when a war is ending or whatever, we cut back to save money, but we also cut back because we always believe we won't need those forces because this has been the big one, right?
We always seem to do that, but it's interesting if you know anything about history and you look back. And this is particularly interesting in the Department of Defense and a number of the books that have been written on the wars and so forth. We never seem to learn from our mistakes. And we seem to make them over and over. And you would think that we would learn some way to learn from those mistakes and not do the same thing over and over, because nobody seems to understand or care, if you will, how much money it takes to recruit and train a young person to come on the active force, and what it costs, the initial cost of training, benefits, and taking care of their families. So it's a tremendous amount of money when you try to build up the force again. But I foresee in the future that we will continue to use the Guard and Reserve components to be right up front on deployments when our nation has to go for the security of the United States.
So actually, it's almost more dangerous in the beginning of something that's building up, particularly because right now we're bringing troops home. There is a call to reduce a huge amount of military force in our country, to reduce the forces. So therefore, that leaves, as you said, the National Guard, in case of an emergency, they would have to go almost first.
That is true. And some years back, there was a real push to downsize, if you will, the number of combat type units in the reserve components. Due to our leadership, both at the local, state, and national level, that was kind of put behind, and we still maintain a lot of the combat type units in the reserve components today. So yes, those guys would be right up front to go. And here again, the good thing is we're teaching families that if they go for extended periods, what the family has to do, what benefits they have, what health care they get, what privileges they have on the military base. So it's very important that we keep the families up to date just as well as we do the training for the reserve components.
Now, you worked in Washington for the last, you worked in the Pentagon for...
I was in the Pentagon from 1989 until I retired in October 2001, except for one term military deployment out to Fort Huachuca, Arizona. During that time, I worked in communications initially when I went to Washington, and then afterward I came back, had one tour with the counter-drug program when you may remember that our country had a war on drugs, and the National Guard Bureau had a large division that worked with the states in assisting law enforcement in the drug problems that we had on the initial onset. After that, I retired right after 9/11 happened, and went to work in the Office of the Secretary of Defense in Homeland Defense, which was a brand new directorate set up to answer the call for the attacks on our country during 9/11. And since then, they work. That office is responsible for handling military support to civil authorities. They work closely with the Department of Homeland Security, the civilian side of the house, and mapping those things and watching the intelligence and so forth to try to make sure that we're never attacked again.
When did you retire from that position now?
I retired from that position in December 2011, and about this time, 2 years ago, I moved back to Greenwood. And since then, I've been working with some of the veterans organizations here in Greenwood, having a good time being retired, but yet staying very, very busy with some of the things that the local organizations are involved in here in Greenwood County.
Sure. Now, since you were on the Homeland Security side, are you concerned that we could be attacked again?
You know, I'm not as concerned as probably the general public, because we have put a lot of things in place. We put security measures in place that we never had before. I'm more concerned that the way we did it was probably not the best way in the world. We took a bunch of different organizations, put them under one Department of Homeland Security. They were autonomous organizations before, and now they're trying to blend them into one 40-something, 50-something organizations to do the mission of Homeland Security. Quite frankly, I think we're stumbling over each other in a lot of incidents where we're trying to be secure, 100% secure. And you and I and your listeners probably know there's no such thing as 100% secure. But I do not think that we are as vulnerable as we were post or pre 9/11.
It certainly changed the way we looked at the world, didn't it?
Oh, it changed it drastically. And just at the Pentagon, how much you know, they put in a complete police force at the Pentagon. That was all. They contracted it out, and all of a sudden it had to be civil service, federal civil service jobs. Every kind of gadget, if you will, in law enforcement was deployed at the Pentagon right after 9/11, and the structure was reinforced. There were planters put with wires in between them so trucks couldn't get close. They've changed the entrances from time to time where you can go in and out. So just at the Pentagon alone, drastic amounts of money was spent for security. And did it really secure us anymore? Maybe. But the security that was there was, we had not been hit before.
Sure.
And interestingly enough, when I first went to Washington, the directorate I worked in had a small branch that actually worked issues like, what if a plane took off from National Airport just right across the way and flew into the Pentagon? And of course, nothing was ever said about a terror attack. It was just What if by accident
right.
it happened? So we had scenarios to play that, and having scenarios, playing the what ifs is kind of like a war plan. You know, you have one, you pull it out, you dust it off. You don't actually implement it as written.
Right.
You may use parts of it. So we had those kind of plans at Pentagon, and some of those plans were actually implemented as a result of 9/11. And so we were prepared to a degree. It was just we didn't know a plane with that much fuel and passengers on board were going to hit right into the big building. And
Sure.
fortunately enough, it went in on the wrong side from where everything was located as far as emergency communications, backup for computers, and so forth. So we were very fortunate that the guys didn't know what they were doing in that regard, but they did know what they were doing when they came inside the building.
You know, Jim, as you look back to 1966, you graduated from Greenwood High. I bet nobody ever locked their doors in Greenwood. It was a different world. How do you rectify the world we live in today with the world you grew up in?
Oh, it's so different, and I can remember we'd go to town, and you never locked your cars. You left the windows down. Nobody locked their homes. Nobody would even think about doing it. Of course, there was always that one or two that would saw something they wanted and would try to get, but for the most part, we were pretty well an unsecure society. And now, I mean, I won't walk out without locking my car, locking my door. And now, how many homes have alarm systems? I mean, it's just it's hard to believe that we've changed that much.
That's what I think.
Is.
Yeah,
It's just hard to believe. But the key thing is our society as a whole has changed, and our attitudes have changed, and morals have changed, and leadership is lacking in our country as a whole. And you know, you can just list them off one after another, and if you put them all together, you can probably get some kind of picture of why we are where we are.
You know, this morning I talked to former Senator Jim DeMint in his new book, Falling in Love with America Again. I know one of the things we're going to talk about with you, he talks about the platoons in our local communities, and whether it would be the food bank or the soup kitchen or a group of individuals doing this or doing that. We have platoons, and he believes, although I have a little bit of skepticism on my part, that the small platoons in all of our communities can take back and fall in love with America again just by doing the things that we do on a local, everyday basis.
I would think there's some positive in that, but I too would be a little skeptical because we as a nation don't know how to deal with disaster as a whole. You know, can you imagine being at the mudslide in Washington State?
No.
Can you imagine being on the plane that went down in wherever?
Yeah. Or how about being in Fort Hood just last week?
Or being at Fort Hood in the second incident in 5 years at Fort Hood. And
what do you think about that as a military guy? What do you think about the fact that that happened again?
Well, I think it's you know, it has something to do with the stress and so forth that soldiers go through being deployed in a combat zone, in my opinion. And when they come back, it's totally different from protecting your life on a minute-by-minute situation in a combat zone and coming back to a post where everything is pretty open. We did, after 9/11, go back and secure our posts with either contractors or military police or whatever, as far as entrance to the post. But you know, when it comes from within, and both of these incidents came from within the military.
Yes.
So, and the one that happened up at the Washington Navy Yard some months back also was from in.
Yeah.
And so when things like that start coming from within, then you need to be looking at policies and procedures and what you're doing or what you're not doing to look at it from an inward look rather than an outside look. And so many times when we talk about security, we want to talk about security from an outside looking in.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not typical or not some of the ways we need to be doing it. We need to be looking at those issues that are causing these people to do some of the things that they're doing. I heard on TV recently, there was an individual that was talking about arming our soldiers when they get back on military base. And sure, if our soldiers that were killed or wounded had been armed, it might have been a different picture. But I'm not sure that arming them on a military base is a thing. I think the problem is deeper rooted, and that it's incumbent upon our leadership in the military services to find an answer to it.
Sure. I mean, all of them had some mental type of problems.
Absolutely.
And they were, I guess, viewing it as not really the problem that they absolutely had to go as far as they went.
Absolutely. And, you know, it's interesting to note that back during the Gulf War, back in the early 90s, one of the real considerations and major issues, if you will, at the Pentagon was the mass murdering that we would have in the war zone. And what would we do? We weren't prepared to do the necessary bringing them back, the bodies back to the state. And so there were plans actually implemented on how they would handle that with mass burials and so forth way back in the early 90s. That never got to the public. I'm not attuned to what,
Right.
if there is any plan like that now, but I did know in the 90s that there were plans put together for that because we didn't know how to address it. However, I think that some of the problems that we're seeing coming back from especially the Middle East are problems that are deep-seated, mental, and it's just like kind of almost like our civilian community. We've kind of pushed mental disorders under the rug, in my opinion, and
Well,
I think
we
we've done
have.
it in the military too. And so it's more or less identifying what the problem is and trying to correct it.
Absolutely. You know, we're here with Colonel James Wheeler. We are going to hear South Carolina news. We'll be back. Hey, if you got a question, give us a call, 229-7984. That's 229-7984.
Are you a pirate or a pack rat? Do you have a vacation of a lifetime sitting in the attic? Or a college tuition hung on a wall? Or is a fabulous retirement hidden in your jewelry box? Bring those items to Sharp Facets Gallery. We can establish value and buy from you or sell for you. And so ends another chapter at Sharp Facets Gallery, 72 Bypass, and on the web, sharpfacets.com.
Oh, that's right. We're right back here, fast and furious, having quite a conversation here this morning or this evening with Jim Wheeler. He, of course, is a colonel. He's retired, and, of course, now he works with the veterans right down here. I first met Jim when he had bought something, I think, down in Mexico, and it wasn't quite what it was supposed to be. Then we started talking about what to do with all the items. Was it from your brother or from your dad? Stuff in the military that you wanted to donate.
It was my brother and some of mine.
Right. And you wanted to donate, and we started talking, and before long we had the Veterans Museum coming up down there, and now you are jumped into this full-blown. But before we get into that, I just want to try to wind up what we were talking about. We've talked about so many changes in the military, changes in our culture, and of course you were talking about one of the issues that they've tried to address, I think, from particularly here in South Carolina. I know Adjutant General Robert Livingston has been very adamant in doing something about, one, the project that his wife works with, Hidden Wounds, and also with suicide. And it is an issue that I don't think anybody really understands. We can all do the top right off the top of our heads. Oh, it's coming back and not being able to find a job, or oh, it's this, oh, it's that. But it's really a complicated issue in today's world.
It is a complicated issue, and as we talked a little while ago, one of the issues that is really, especially in the Army, has been around for the last number of years, and that's the number of suicides. General Shirelli was a commander over in Iraq, and came back, and he's really worked that issue in trying to solve it. But there, it seems to be no answer, because some of those suicides were even taking place over in country before they came back. And then, of course,
now that one was one I hadn't even thought about. I always think about the suicides of our guys and gals coming home,
right,
and not being able either to fit back in or whatever the issue
sure.
is.
Well, some of them do commit suicide over there, and in the Army it was on kind of a rampage, and he has tried to get various groups, both military and civilian, to help and assist in identifying the issues. The last thing I read, it's down some right now, the number of suicides in the Army, but it hadn't been solved, and that's the problem. And it's just like the mental situation of our military men and women coming back, and they need treatment. And one of the things that our Veterans Organization is trying to do is to keep that as a top priority for the VA and assisting our vets that come back. And a lot of our vets are even World War II vets and Korean vets that need that same kind of assistance. So we're not just talking about the young men and women that are returning from the recent wars. We're talking about all the way back, because there are some that still aren't getting the help that they deserve.
It's very interesting, though, Jim. Did we have World War II, Korean War veterans? There seems to be, there's more emphasis on it today than there ever was when, let's say, because we have more of them today, Korean War vets coming home and the issues they faced. Do you think it was somewhat because we were able to put them right to work, and the nation was in a big building part of our nation? Or
I think that's very true. I think one of the issues that I've seen since I started working with the VA, with the Veterans Organization, though, is that we didn't have as many veterans out of Korea as we had World War II. And so if you actually compared the ratio of number of deaths, World War II to Korean, we're losing more Korean vets than we are World War II.
To what? To suicide, or to
to aging.
Right.
Aging, basically.
Sure.
So
that was the word to end all wars, right?
Well, that's what somebody said. I don't remember exactly who said that, but
yes.
And it's kind of interesting that we kind of step around the word war when it's really war,
right.
And we don't know how to define war anymore. I don't believe in our country. We want to talk about war on poverty. We want to talk about war on terror, war on drugs,
war on women.
War on women.
There you go.
I mean, you name it. We got a war for almost any.
Except actual war.
Except actual
where
war.
People get killed.
Right.
Which is what war always used to be about, right?
Exactly. But we have found that there has been a great difference in the way veterans are received now than they were, for instance, in Vietnam. So there's been a lot of things that have changed for the betterment for our returning troops, but there's still a lot that needs to be done.
Sure. And, of course, we want to talk about some of the issues and whatnot that we have going forward here. Now, you are involved down there at the Veteran Center, and we do have to say a word about Kerry Bolt. When the old library came up and he was looking for a Veteran Center, he was immersive on going forward and working hard to try to get that building. And, of course, County Council was gracious to come through with it. But it's been a long process.
It has been a long process, and Kerry Bolt is an outstanding individual. As most of you probably know, he's a Veterans Affairs officer here in Greenwood County and also in Lawrence County. He's been instrumental in doing some of the things that's ongoing locally with the different veterans organizations, the VA Center, the the War Museum, the Hall of Heroes. It's just almost amazing to see what he has done in a very short period of time. And of course, we'll talk in a few minutes, I'm sure, about the Hall of Heroes and some of the things that are going to be taking place at the VA Center. You used a word that I don't like to hear anymore, because I hear it every time they say, and I didn't say this, okay?
Okay.
The old library.
Yeah.
But it was the old library.
Sure. Well, I mean, when you were living here and you went to the library, and now you see that building totally gutted, clean, carpeted, beautiful. I mean, it's just fantastic how we've been able to repurpose a building that a lot of people said, it's not going to be able to be used for anything.
Well, I'm glad they were wrong,
Yeah.
because it has a purpose. It has a very meaningful purpose. A number of the military vet organizations have their meetings there. For the general public, they may not know this. Landa ROTC has their classroom and some of their instruction and so forth in the building. So it's coming alive. It's coming alive with the museum, the Hall of Heroes, and then when we do, or we get in place some of the outside decorations, if you will, to honor veterans. You won't even know the building was a library anymore. It will always be the VA Center. Yeah.
It's pretty neat. Now, there are 14 veterans organizations housed in there. That is quite an amazing number of veterans. How many veterans do we actually have here in Greenwood County?
In Greenwood County, we have approximately 5,100 plus, which is a large number of veterans in Greenwood County. And it's a variety. A lot of them are young veterans who have returned from the current situation that's been ongoing the last 10 years, 12 years on the War on Terror. A lot of them are Vietnam veterans. A lot of them are World War II veterans, and of course Korea.
Sure.
So we have a mixture of veterans here, and the different organizations, and I don't have a count exactly how many of the veterans participate in the 14 different organizations. But we have a representative that attends the Greenwood County Coalition of Veterans Organization. We have one member from each one of those 14 organizations, and we actually support two major items, or events, if you will, here in Greenwood County. And this is all done from volunteers. We do the Memorial Day ceremony at Oak Brook Cemetery. This year that will take place on May the 25th. And we also do the Veterans Day parade that happens on the weekend, the Sunday of Veterans Day, before Veterans Day. And we will be taking on a couple of other items in the coming months. I hope everybody knows, and if you don't know, I hope you'll go to the Greenwood County Library, the new Greenwood County Library, and go to the Veterans Conference Room and see the display that the VA Center has put up in recognition of Sergeant Eric Pfeiffer, who was killed in Afghanistan in 2005. It's a really, really neat display, and the county council observed it a couple of weeks back.
Sure. And we do need to say that the library actually had the cabinet built, that they did that, and it really is a wonderful cabinet.
It really is, and our coalition will be taking over, selecting an individual and building the exhibit, and we're going to try to run that for 6 months so that everybody in the county will have an opportunity to take a look at it within that 6-month period. The other item that the coalition will be sponsoring and doing in the future, not this year, but in 2015, is the induction into the Hall of Heroes, the individuals selected in Greenwood County to be inducted into the Hall of Heroes.
That is such an awesome event. Having gone to that one last year in August, I think it was. At Lander. Such an awesome event, and you just learn so much about people that you come in contact with every day, and you have no idea that this person did the things that they did.
Oh, it's very unusual in that, a quick story, a veteran died just recently within the last 2 years since I've been back to Greenwood. I worked for him as a Greenville News paper boy morning carrier back in the 60s. Never knew he was a World War II vet. And what's been so amazing in getting involved with the different organizations is how many people are veterans that have never said anything to anybody about it.
Exactly.
Really
my point.
quiet. They go about their business and don't talk about it. But you know, that's kind of common because I did volunteer for the World War II monument dedication in Washington, D.C. in 2008.
Mm-hmm.
And they put on a big event to try to get veterans to tell their stories so they could document it in the Library of Congress. Outstanding event. But it goes back to the point that World War II veterans don't necessarily like to talk about their experiences in World War II.
Well, you know, but doesn't that go to, actually, I think a lot of veterans, Vietnam veterans, you know, I've talked to many of them that, you know, and they always tell me, and I'll say, well, tell me a story. Well, Ann, if you weren't there, we're not going to talk to you. And I say, why is that? Because veterans understand veterans. And I'm like, but I can empathize.
That is true.
Yeah, it is true.
That is very true. It's interesting.
It is. But it had to be awesome to be there. I guess a lot of veterans came to that.
Oh, there were, in all the different national veterans organization, like we have the local Veterans of Foreign Wars, or Disabled Veterans, or American Legion, or the Marine Corps League. All of them had their own
Or the
big
women.
organization. Oh, and the auxiliaries of
Yes.
the DAR and the VFW. And in Greenwood, I might add, those two organizations are very, very active and do a lot.
Well,
to
you just have to
participate.
say that Sandra Johnston's there, and if you're involved, you're going to be doing.
You're going to be doing. Sandra is a world. I'm telling you, she really knows how to get things done. But all those organizations were there on the mall in Washington.
Mm-hmm.
It was the most. You just couldn't help but just want to say, man, I wish I could have been in World War II, because those guys, I mean, a lot of them did tell their stories because they really were trying to document it for the Library.
Well, I went on an honor flight. I think it was a year ago in May. And it was the most awesome experience because I was there as a reporter, and they'd all keep telling me, hey, radio lady, I've got a story for you.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and when we went there and you could see guys that hadn't seen each other, I saw two guys that hadn't seen each other since high school, had gone to the same high school, and had never seen each other. They ended up on the same flight.
Well,
And stuff like that, just...
the interesting thing about it, it took our country so long to honor World War II veterans in a monument in Washington, D.C. And I think that has brought out a lot, and especially what the honor flights have done.
Mm-hmm.
There's been guys that would, had we not had the honor flights, they would have never seen the monument.
That's true.
And I must tell you, when they first told me what they were going to do, I was really upset with them because I couldn't see killing the view from the Washington Monument to the Lincoln Memorial. But they did a fantastic job in sinking it and so forth, and they worked hard on getting it. And I think that monument has brought together veterans that probably would have never told their story, never opened like they have in recent years, because that monument is beautiful, and we all as Americans should be proud of it.
And all the stars.
Oh,
all
yes.
the stars. I
Yes.
mean, when you look at the number of stars. But don't you think that's true even of the Vietnam Wall?
Oh, yes, I think so. I mean, all the monuments in Washington are every American should be proud, and every American should be or have the opportunity to visit Washington and see the monuments and what a great city it is. And while we hear more of the bad, it is a great city, and it's a wonderful city to visit.
It certainly is. And it is the home of so many good things. Just one more story, going to the Korean memorial there. I mean, it's really eerie to see the soldiers going through the field there. But the thing that always amazed me is every time I have been there, there has been a wreath from the Korean people there. And it's just to me amazing that after all these years, they still say thank you. And how many
Absolutely.
Koreans actually go to the monument to honor the fact of our people coming to their rescue.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
just, it's awesome, and the most awesome thing is to see it when it snows, because you know in Korea they have
It was
rough
cold,
winters, and
yes.
it was really rough winters. But to see that monument with snow on the ground,
I bet it is.
it's awesome. Really awesome.
I bet it's eerie.
It is
It's
eerie.
I bet
Eerie's
it's
a good
eerie.
word,
Yes,
yes.
yeah, that's great. Well, let's so to all of our service people out there, a big thank you for all that they have done for us and continue to do for us. The Veterans Center down here does so many good things. The Hall of Heroes, the list has already been turned in,
Yes, ma'am.
and they will be being put together.
Yes, ma'am. And currently, the plan is right now to have it back at Lander again this year, only if the monument there at the VA Center is not complete. If that's complete, there is some talk that we'd love to have it there. But we're getting pretty close to August, so I'm not sure that's going to happen.
Sure.
But Jim, just for your listeners' knowledge, Jim Dominic, who is president of the board of the Veterans Hall of Heroes, Inc., is presenting a presentation on the Hall of Heroes to the Greenwood City Council this afternoon at 5:30. So if you're a veteran and have the time to get there,
Would
room
show a lot of
207.
support.
Exactly.
And that's in the
Municipal building.
Right.
Yeah.
So fill it up, guys and gals. Fill it up. You know, that would be, of course, they did this similar at the county.
That's true.
At the
They have
county
done it
meeting,
at
yeah.
county meeting.
So that's one of the things that are going on. But, you know, one of the things I know we're going to run out of time, but some of the veterans issues that are facing the state and what is happening on those expanding state veterans nursing homes. You know, some of the stories I've heard, Jim, about how our veterans are living in some of these nursing homes really breaks your heart.
It is, that is true. However, I would tell you that visiting a nursing home very often is not a very rewarding experience anyway. I would say that in recent years, probably the last 2 years, 3 maybe, General Shinseki, who was the Secretary of the Army, took over Veterans Affairs, and there have been some improvements, but there needs to be a lot more. And I might throw in a note for the Conard House here in Greenwood that
Yes, that I didn't even know about, and I'm really involved with all the veteran stuff until just about 6 months ago.
yeah, the Conard House is on South Main Street, right near the fire department. They take honorable discharged veterans who do not have criminal or sex crimes. They were referred from the VA hospital down in Columbia, and they get money, support that, approximately $43 a day for those guys, and they can stay there till, they help them try to get a job, and
And they're usually homeless, aren't they?
they're usually homeless.
Sure.
And but great place. If you haven't visited there, please stop by and see those guys at Conard Manor.
Sure, and I know Sandra, one of her projects is putting together laundry baskets when the guys move out and move
Exactly.
into their first apartment, for whether it's soap and towels and sheets and all that kind of stuff. So that's a really good program that they do there. What do you think? We only have about 4 or 5 minutes left here. What are some of the other biggies here that you'd like to get in?
Well, one of the issues ongoing right now, and this came up in the state legislature several years ago, and then because of the economy, it got dropped. Several states in the United States do not tax veterans, state income tax on veteran retirement. That issue's come back up in the state, and I think it'll be high on the agenda in 2014. North Carolina, let's see if I get this right. North Carolina and Georgia, I believe, do not tax. And most recently, the state of Iowa passed that and do not tax military retirement as far as state tax go. There's several other on there that just general items about cutting veterans benefits with TRICARE and the health benefits, trying to cut the COLA, their cost of living increases every year.
Sure.
So I would ask that, as we ask all the veterans and the organizations to please write your state legislature representatives, congressional delegations, to weigh in on these problems that are affecting vets. I can assure you that our congressional and state legislature delegations, they read the letters. So I would ask that if you're a vet or know a vet and there's an issue you're concerned about, to please write your delegation.
Well, one thing we certainly should not be doing is cutting their health care.
Absolutely
I
not.
mean, you know, they gave their life potentially. They come back with all kinds of issues. That certainly is an issue which should be no question.
It should be no question, and of course, none of us know what health care is going to be here in the near future. Mm-hmm. But they can, and the Congress and the Department of Defense need to get together and take care of our veterans, especially with health care. Definitely.
Sure. And so there are so many things, and you know, the one thing I can say that I am proud of South Carolina is all the job fairs that they've had for them coming back, and some of the organizations, the big businesses as well as small businesses, but the big businesses that have made a real push to hire our veterans and make sure they have a job.
Exactly.
And that to me is the first step to being able to be self-sufficient and independent, and mental health helps a lot with that too.
Exactly, very, very true. And I think we're making strides. We're making, especially in Greenwood County, and I think we have a governor that supports veterans.
Well, she should.
She has made the comment at our Military Officers Association meeting last year in Greenville that she would like to see that South Carolina be known as a veterans-friendly state. And we're doing a lot to try to make that happen, and applaud what she and the state legislature are doing for our veterans.
Absolutely. You know, you're listening to WCRS. You know, I'm Ann Eller. You know, I've been here with retired Colonel Jim Wheeler. Jim, thanks so much for taking time out of your day and sitting down and telling us all about some good issues here today.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, and I appreciate all our folks in Greenwood County that are looking out for our veterans.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, everybody. Bye-bye. Hey, you know, we hope to have the news fixed in the next couple of days, so just enjoy the music. It'll be gone in a few days. Bye-bye, everybody.